All right, let's talk buyer personas. If your buyer personas aren't making marketing easier for you, it's probably not because they're bad necessarily, but because you're making one of these common mistakes when creating them. A good buyer persona will always give you clarity, confidence, and direction in who you're targeting. And if it doesn't feel like that for you, if you've created buyer personas and they're just not helping you at all, or they're confusing you, or they're not helping you reach your target audience, that's okay. I'm here to help you. So in this video, I'll walk you through the 5 mistakes that I see people make when creating buyer personas so that you can avoid them and turn those personas into a tool that you'll actually use and a resource that you can rely on, rather than something that just collects dust in a Google Drive. By the way, I'm Andrew from Audience. We have over 2,000 customers from big brands to major agencies and everything in between that use our audience intelligence platform to really figure out who their audience is, including all the data that they need to build better content strategies, better messaging strategies, better campaigns, and of course, to build better buyer personas. If you're ready to take your audience seriously and do better audience research, I'll leave a link in the comments below where you can check out more about Audience, more about our tools. I'm also gonna leave a link to a free trial in the comments, so make sure to go check that out. All right, let's get into the 5 mistakes you're gonna absolutely want to avoid when creating buyer personas. So first things first, in my opinion, this is the biggest mistake that you will ever make when creating buyer personas, and that's building personas based off assumptions and not speaking to your customers or your sales team. This one seems obvious, but it's so overlooked by people, and usually it's because there's a time crunch around it. When you speak to customers, when you speak to the sales team, it can really draw out the process. It takes a lot of time, and maybe you're under pressure to create these personas. You want to launch a new campaign, you want to target a new audience, whatever the case may be. But I promise you, if you skip this step, it really will hurt you in the long run. And it's absolutely 100% recommended to speak to your customers and your sales team before you ever build a persona. Now, just to put this in context, I want you to imagine that you're a company that makes and sells bread. I know that's a weird example, but stay with me here. So you make and sell bread, and sourdough, it's your best seller. It has been for years. You built personas around it. You have the artisan foodie, you have the weekend brunch crowd, sales are good, your company's doing well, everyone loves it, life is good, everyone's happy. And then over time, you start to notice that your sales start to decline. And at first, no big deal, whatever, maybe it's a seasonal thing, maybe not, it's okay. But then month over month, you start to see the sales declining more and more, and everyone starts panicking, and it's like, let's do a rebrand, let's, change the messaging, let's change the content strategy up. And you do all that and you still see the sales declining. And it's not because what you were doing was bad. It's not because the messaging was bad or the content itself was bad. It's because you weren't talking to your customers. So you didn't know that all along, those customers that loved your sourdough bread, their lifestyle habits were changing, and now they were making the switch to gluten-free bread. So all that work you were doing, all that new content, all that new messaging, it was just falling on deaf ears because you'd already lost your customers. And this could have also been avoided by speaking to the sales team, right? They're the ones on the front lines. They're having calls with prospects. They're having customer calls. They just have a ton of valuable information to share. But if there's no open line of communication or there's no system in place to collect that knowledge, then you're just working in a silo, and you're going to end up relying on these old buyer personas, old assumptions, even when your target audience is starting to switch, and you're going to miss out on capturing them or re-engaging them, and you're going to lose your customers. So what I recommend here is absolutely, you want to avoid creating personas based on assumptions, and you always want to involve your customers and your sales team. From the sales team perspective, just set up a system where once a month you take a handful of prospect calls, a handful of customer calls, you take the transcripts, you run them through ChatGPT, you start to ask it to show you patterns, what people are liking, what they're not liking, what the alternatives are, so that you can always keep your buyer personas up to date. And so when a situation like this happens, you see it coming from a mile away. And as a company, as a marketing department, you can make that switch and start to change the way that you're approaching your customers. So mistake number 1 that you absolutely need to avoid is building personas on assumptions and not involving your sales team or your customers. It is going to kill you in the long run. And that brings me to mistake number 2, which is really just an extension of mistake number 1, and that's not regularly updating your buyer personas. Quick story time. So the brand Stanley drinking cups, pretty big. People love it. Well, before it became the mainstream success that it is today, did you know that Stanley Drinking Cups was targeted towards blue-collar men, and their products were marketed as a rugged cup that they could bring on the job site with them? Then in 2016, Stanley made the 40-ounce Quencher tumbler, which still, by the way, was targeted towards blue-collar men working on the job. And by 2019, that product was facing discontinuation. The company was still doing about $70 million in sales, but it just wasn't enough for sustained growth. Then in late 2019, a women-run blog called The Buy Guide got wind that this tumbler was going to be discontinued, and they started promoting it to their audience. They had become fans of the Tumblr. They started promoting it to their audience loved it, they ate it up, and it started to get very popular among the blog's audience. Long story short, Stanley reaches out, they offer them a wholesale deal, they give them 10,000 cups, and it is a massive success. Within 5 days, all 10,000 cups are sold to that audience. But here's where it gets interesting. About 97% of that blog's audience were women between the ages of 24 and 45, and this was a demographic and a type of customer that Stanley had never even thought about targeting before. So obviously, when the success happens, Stanley does a complete 180. All of a sudden, they change up their whole targeting approach. Now they're looking at new colorways for these women, pastels, ergonomic handles that can fit in car cup holders, and really just moving the targeting towards these women. The Quencher, which by the way was going to be discontinued before the blog picked it up, it replaced Stanley's signature mug as their top seller, and it has been that way since 2020. So this example right here should show you just how dangerous it is to just keep relying on and using old personas or legacy personas or assumptions that you have about your audience. When Stanley updated their personas and they made this shift to millennial mothers and younger women and started looking at new colors and new distribution and new product features, their success absolutely skyrocketed. So I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time that you actually took a step back and you did some audience research to see if there's any new opportunity audiences out there? If you haven't done it in a while, it might be time. By the way, if you like this video so far, you've learned something or you found value in it, please like and subscribe. We're dropping videos like this all the time to help you be a better marketer and to understand your audience better. So growing the channel, growing the community is something that's important to us. So again, if you like it, please drop a like, please subscribe, it means the world. All right, and now on to mistake number 3, and that's treating personas as being one-dimensional and making them overly simplistic. Now, I'm not saying you need to capture every grain of detail under the sun, because that can also be super counterproductive when it comes to buyer personas. And what I mean is, and what I see a lot of, is people building personas in isolation and not treating different types of customers in different contexts. So here's what I mean, and I see this more in B2B buyer personas, where people are creating personas and they're not considering the different types of users, right? So you have end users, you have decision makers, you have influencers, but instead of creating personas for all 3 of them in a separate way, you're treating them all the same, right? With the same messaging, the same content, the same targeting strategies. And the main message I'm trying to get across here is that I see a lot of B2B personas be treated like B2C personas, where they're going to be overly simplistic and just focusing on basic demographics as a single buyer, and that is a huge mistake. And what happens here is you end up creating these one-dimensional personas that speak the same way to the CEO and the social media manager, even though one signs the checks and one actually uses the tool. So the idea here is that you want to create layered personas that capture multiple roles and contexts, right? One for the decision maker, one for the influencer, one for the end user, and figure out how to map each of them to the different stages of the buyer journey. Instead of your persona saying Mike, the marketing manager, 34, loves his cappuccinos, you're going to want to follow a process that looks like this. So step 1 is you're going to want to start with the role and the jobs to be done. So you're going to want to identify the person in the role in the buyer journey. Again, that's going to be the decision maker, the influencer, or the end user, and then you're going to want to pair that with their jobs to be done. So these are the pain points that they feel every day. And then step 2, you're going to want to identify buying triggers over personality traits. So instead of just targeting CEO at a SaaS company, you're going to want to look for buying triggers that can help you build better personas. So you're going to want to say, okay, they just raised a Series A, they're hiring a marketing team, or they just got a new social listening tool. And so the best way to build personas like this is to go back to the top where we talked about mistake number 1, and that's you're going to want to talk to your customers in your sales team, right? You're going to want to get that information where you see what are the challenges they have, what are the jobs to be done, and what do they need to see from you in order to buy your product or service. So mistake number 3 that you absolutely need to avoid is making your buyer personas one-dimensional and making them overly simplistic. It just won't help you in the long run. All right, on to mistake number 4, and that's ignoring buying triggers and objections. Now, I just obviously talked briefly about buying triggers and objections, but it is such an important part of personas that I felt like it needed its own section. So we're going to dive into it here. Now, this one's a sneaky one because it's not obvious until you've already wasted a ton of time and budget building personas this way. So here's what I mean. You could have a beautifully designed persona. It could be loaded with demographic information, psychographic demographic information, everything under the sun, a good couple quotes, some pictures. But if your persona doesn't tell you exactly why someone either would or wouldn't buy from you, it's not going to be useful to you. So think about it this way. Say that your persona is a VP of marketing and she tells you that all she cares about is brand growth. That's great, but what is the actual trigger that gets her to move from what she's doing now to actually wanting a tool like yours? Did her team just get budget? Did they just hire a new agency? Do they need better data? Like, what are the buying triggers that would actually make her say in her day-to-day job, you know what, I need this product right now? That's what I mean when I say buying triggers. And if you don't have them, your personas are going to be useless. And then the same thing with objections, right? Like, let's say that same VP of marketing is really excited about a tool like yours, but you haven't mapped out the possible objections as to why she wouldn't buy it. So maybe she just bought Salesforce and your product doesn't integrate with Salesforce, and you keep running through the same messaging about time savings and faster ROI and all that sort of stuff, which doesn't even matter, because to her, you could have all the nicest features, all these benefits, but if it doesn't integrate with Salesforce, that's an immediate no for her. And that's the idea that I'm trying to get across here, is that a persona without objections and buying triggers is just a nice picture to look at. It's not going to be a tool that you can actually use to get someone to buy from you. So what's the solution? Yeah, you're probably going to guess it. What are we doing? We're going back to the top for mistake number 1, and we are going to talk to our customers and we're going to talk to our sales team. What you're going to want to do here is map the moments where people raise their hand, as well as the roadblocks that keep them from buying your product. And this is what's going to give you that valuable information to make your personas actually drive impact, rather than just being something that sits around or makes you more confused. All right, now for our 5th and final mistake, and that's creating personas that don't actually drive action. And I know this one seems obvious, but it happens more than you think. So here's how it usually plays out. And if this is you, drop a comment below. I know this has been me a ton of times, but here's how it usually plays out. You spend weeks building the personas, you get some pictures, you got demographic information, you got quotes, everything looks good, right? And then when it comes time to use it, maybe you use it in a meeting once, maybe you reference it here and there, maybe you're not using it at all, and it just becomes a waste of time to work on. So the problem here is simple, right? If your buyer persona can't answer the question, what type of content should we post next? Where should we post it? And what should we do with this $5,000 in ad budget that we have, then it's a useless persona to you. And like I said at the beginning, right, a good persona should make marketing easier. It should tell you what type of content you should post, what type of channels that you should be on, what type of messaging you should use. Essentially, it should help you figure out how you can get a customer closer to actually buying the thing that you sell. So what does this look like in practice? Your persona document should highlight things like this. So the first one would be content topics they're hungry for. So maybe this is content thought leadership rather than just generic marketing posts or roundup posts. So this could be customer retention strategies instead of just basic marketing thought leadership posts. Preferred channels. So do they like to be on YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, right? Rather than just doing a spray and pray and trying to be everywhere all at once. You want to look at the trusted voices. So who are the newsletters they follow, the influencers they follow, the big channels that they follow. You really want to dial in on who that is so you can get a better understanding of who they are and who they're influenced by. Buying behaviors. So what triggers them to take action? What objections or roadblocks do they have that would keep them from buying? And yes, again, to get all this information, you are going to want to talk to your customers. And of course, you're going to want to talk to your sales team. Now, really quickly, there is a way to scale and expedite this process. And I'm by no means saying that it should replace talking to your customers or sales teams, but it is an add-on that the best marketing teams use. So with our platform, Audience Insights, you can actually run this kind of report in under 10 minutes, and it's going to give you all the data that you need to build a very deep and meaningful and actionable buyer persona. The reports are going to show you what type of content that your audience engages with, who influences them, where they spend their time online, even their buying and personality insights. So that way, instead of staring at a persona document and thinking, what should I do next? You'll have all the information that you need right in the platform to build one that you can feel confident about, and one that's actually going to be a great tool and a great resource for you in targeting the audience that you want to target. If you want to learn more, I'll leave a link in the description where you can learn more about the product, as well as a free trial link for you to check out for yourself. All right, so if you've found that building personas has been a useless activity, or that they're just confusing you, or that they just haven't been working for you, just make sure that you avoid these 5 mistakes, and you should start seeing better results soon. And if you like this video and you learned something, please like and subscribe. We're making videos like this all the time to help you know your audience inside out and to help you be a much better marketer. If you have any questions or comments, just drop them below. And if you want to learn more about building personas using AI, I have a video here where I used Claude and our Audience Insights platform to build a really detailed buyer persona in no time, so make sure to go check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.